Welcome to another episode of The Next Generation. Today I have Ashlee Westerhold on with me, and she is a fellow K-Stater working here in Manhattan. And we're going to talk all things succession planning today. I know this is a topic we talk about pretty regularly on here, guys, but I am so excited to get Ashlee's perspective and just talk a little bit more about what she does professionally to help farmers and ranchers through this, but then also just everything else surrounding it. So, Ashlee, I'm not going to blab for too long. I would love it if you could just take it away, share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and all the things.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast. I am not the best podcast person. This is one of my first times, but I'm happy to talk about our program, what I do, and happy to answer a lot of questions. So I'm Ashlee Westerhold. I am the director of the Office of Farm and Ranch Transition at Kansas State University. I grew up in Northeast Georgia. So a lot of people are like, why don't you have a Southern accent? Well, actually, my dad is from Nebraska and my mom is from Illinois, and I just did not pick one up. And so I do not have a Southern accent. I knew from a young age that I was actually going to go to school where my dad went to school, which is the big bad state up north, which is Nebraska. So I actually got my bachelor's and master's in Ag Econ from Nebraska. When I was at Nebraska, I knew I wanted to be in agriculture, and so I was always good at math. So I thought ag engineering, and I'll work for the tractor test lab at Nebraska, and I will work for John Deere as soon as I am done with school. Little did I know that engineering is not my jam. And the same semester that I took Ag Engineering 101, I took Ag Econ 141 at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And my advisor and the teacher of that class was Dr. Ron Hansen. And so Dr. Hansen had been helping families through succession planning since 1979. And so I just fell in love with the idea of helping farmers and ranchers continue their business to the next generation. And so a lot of my job has been trying to become the next Dr. Hansen. And a lot of what I have done in my career, in my education, has tried to lead that path of I want to help farmers and ranchers complete a succession plan, complete transition plans, and keep more farmers and ranchers, families in our small towns. And so I've kind of led with that. I, again, got my bachelor's and master's in Ag Econ. I went to the University of Idaho as a first stop in extension to teach farmers and ranchers farm financial management and farm succession planning. And so I did a lot of work with Idaho farmers. In Idaho, we actually had a huge dairy industry. And so you're talking about massive farms, 15,000 milking cows and multiple employees, but they're still a family-ran business. And so even those businesses had to be passed down in some way. That led me to pursue more business consulting opportunities to where I became very well versed in what other business consultants were teaching people about succession planning, how to help those farms, what kind of structures are working for farmers in transition planning. And then I went and got trained as a mediator. So when you're talking about family conversations and passing the farm to a next generation, or even someone who's not related to you, but a next generation nonetheless, you need some maybe mediation tactics or a third party to help facilitate those conversations. And so I would say that is one of the biggest pieces of my education and training that I use every day of my job. And so that led me to pursue this opportunity at Kansas State to become the director of the Office of Farm and Ranch Transition. And that position was open in 2021 and I came in 2022. And it was all based on a beginning farmer rancher development grant by Robin Reed, who is also in our Department of Ag Econ at Kansas State University. So that kind of gives a little bit of background on my education, my training, getting me into the position that I'm in today and how my position was created. So I'm happy to answer any questions or start the conversation of what that looks like, however you want to proceed.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love if you could just talk a little bit more about your role at K-State and kind of just what that has looked like, leading farmers and ranchers throughout the state of Kansas, and further out, just through succession planning and through handing down an operation, just kind of what that looks like for you, and kind of a little bit about your passion for it and a lot of things like that.
Yeah, so this job was actually created to help launch a Landlink program. And so a lot of my job has been developing and managing a Kansas Landlink program. And so Landlink programs have been used across the United States where they're trying to give land access to beginning farmers and ranchers from ranchers or farmers that do not have a next generation that are interested in coming back. So we're giving them a platform to meet each other through the Landlink program. And again, we try to follow other Landlink programs that are across the US on how we model that. But really, the crux of why I'm here and how this grant was funded was to help land access issues for beginning farmers and ranchers. So, getting beginning farmer rancher applications or profiles out to retiring farmers and ranchers who might not know where to look to find someone interested in taking over their farm. And so, a lot of my job, again, has been matching those folks. So, older retiring farmers and ranchers that don't have someone coming back reach out to my office and they say, "Hi, I have this many acres. I have this much equipment. I'm looking for a young person who wants to come to my community, that wants to take over my farm or ranch, work with me for a little while before I just hand it over to them, but start a relationship where we're building trust and they could potentially be my next generation on this farm." And so my role is to facilitate those connections, help provide land seeker information to our landowners. Our landowners in that process are completely anonymous, so no one is going to know who is a landowner in our system. We just don't want people knocking at their neighbor's door saying, "We know you're looking for someone to take over your farm. Can I be that person?" We have a very private way of going about the land link, and we modeled that after the University of Nebraska's land link. And so that is just one facet of my job, is trying to get, again, beginning farmers and ranchers land access from retiring or close to retiring farmers and ranchers who have the land, that are trying to slow down and really want their legacy to be passed on to a next generation. And so that is just one part of what I do. The other part is that I work with farmers and ranchers who've already picked a successor or are even thinking about selling out or whatever that transition is, but I help them do one-on-one technical assistance. So I meet with farmers and ranchers at their homes or at a local extension office or at their local bank, wherever they feel most comfortable meeting me. And we just talk about what their goals are and what they are thinking is their strategy to go through with those goals, to make sure those goals are followed out. And I try to help ground truth what they're thinking of, or realistically say, okay, if this is the plan that you have in place, what does it look like once it's implemented? And a lot of people really appreciate that I am there as a sounding board, because if they heard their neighbor set up this type of plan in succession or estate planning or whatever it might be, they sometimes think, "Oh, that plan will work for me. That sounds so good for my operation. It sounds like it will work perfectly for us." And I am there to kind of help you understand what that plan actually is, how that would look for your family. Is that the right plan? You'll have to decide for yourself, but I can let you know how it's played out in the past. And so I do one-on-one technical assistance with farmers who have someone related to them, who have someone not related to them, who have a neighbor who's interested, who's kind of a similar age, that I'm like, well, okay, you're passing it to someone the same age as you. And then I have people that are interested in, I really want to sell out because we want to actually retire. And so we need a buyout plan or whatever that might be. And so I've worked with farmers and ranchers every single day. That could be by a phone call, that could be me visiting them. But I talk to them every single day about transition planning. And then the third part of my job, which is a large pillar, is beginning farmer rancher development trainings. And so we actually offer a returning to the farm course for Kansas State students. And so this is AggieCon 450. It's in the spring and it's called Returning to the Farm, where we work with students who are interested in going back to the farm. If it's right after college, 10 years down the road, whatever it might be, but how to prepare them to start having those conversations now. Where would they fit in? So if their parents are 45 now and in 10 years they're still 55 and they feel like they still have a long work life in their future, what will your role be? What will you play? How will you get paid? How will you financially swing going and returning to the farm? Additionally, like, what are lease agreements that you might want to enter into? How do you fill out an FSA beginning farmer rancher loan? And so those are kind of things that we talk about in our course. And so, yeah, those are kind of the three pillars of my office. And so I work within those pillars truly every day. And I love what I do. I think, yeah, I can leave it at that for now. And you ask more follow-up questions.
Yeah, I would love to. You talk to farmers and ranchers every day about what their plan is for their next generation, what they're doing right now, just business development, all of these sorts of things. And then also educating people that are going back to operations about succession planning and things like that. What are you seeing right now? What are people needing help with? Where are areas or gaps where we're just not educated? Where are areas that we need to understand better? Just common themes, things like that. What are you seeing right now in agriculture on that facet?
So right now, I think everyone has heard it so many times, but it is very difficult for a young person to have the capital to be able to start farming without a helping hand, without someone there to help support them, get their feet wet, or get them into an opportunity where it is beneficial for them. They can make it cash flow. Right now, with our land prices, with how much equipment cost, at what size, we are seeing you need to have to be profitable. It is truly almost impossible for a young person to come in and be able to do it on their own without some sort of capital investment made by another family member or by someone working with them and giving them a helping hand and work kind of like a benefactor in a way. And so we do need more landowners who don't have that next generation interested in trying to help those young folks come into farming, if that is what they want to see, which a lot of the farmers that I work with are very passionate about. We need young people out here. We want people still in our communities. We want people having their kids in our school system. We don't want to consolidate our elementary school or high school. We want it to still be our town. And for it to be our town, we need to bring young people back. And I think that is a big push. I would say another thing that I see a lot is that a lot of family members or families don't understand how their estate plan affects their succession plan, or how their lack of estate plan, or how an estate plan that they created 15 years ago, what it actually looks like when it plays out. And so a lot of the clients that I have worked with have estate plans that say undivided interest to all of my children. And there might be only one farm child and there are two off-farm children. And what they're doing is they're setting up the opportunity for the two off-farm children to want to be bought out by the one on-farm children or on-farm child. And it's causing a huge issue of, can that on-farm child buy out the farm again? Can they rebuy all these assets from siblings? And what does that look like when it plays out with that estate plan? And so there's a lot of challenges that are in these conversations that I have with families. But I would say the need of capital for the beginning younger farmer rancher is one of the highest needs and biggest challenge for them. And then on the other side, it's the planning part for the older generation of, what does their estate plan say, but also how are they going to pay for their own retirement? So we have a lot of farmers and ranchers that loved to reinvest in their business instead of investing in off-farm assets. So not a lot of 401ks out on the farm, not a lot of stocks, bonds, cash accounts, but they have a whole brand new line of equipment. And how are they going to retire? And how do they retire without paying a ton of taxes on sale of equipment and machinery? And so those are just some of the things that we unpack, or my office tries to help unpack with folks, is what are your retirement plans and how do you plan to pay for retirement? And what's the expectation of the next generation coming in? Do they need to buy you out? Is the expectation that they work for nothing to receive this? Is the expectation that they buy the new combine if it needs updated and your equipment kind of depreciates and dies down? And so these are conversations that I have. Even yesterday, I had this conversation. So those are some of the topics that do rise to the surface. But again, the capital requirements needed to farm these days, it is truly, you need someone to work with and you need someone to help you get started.
Yeah, you definitely do. It's crazy, the land prices and just cost of everything right now. I would love to kind of dive a little bit more into that, of the not familial succession planning that you guys kind of do, what that looks like, your guys' kind of process of connecting people. Because like you said, a lot of farmers and ranchers really do have a passion for bringing individuals, young families, young individuals back to their communities, and offering them a place in that community to continue farming that land, to continue ranching on that land, whatever that may look like. Just kind of, what does that process look like? And we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, so I would say the more further along process of how it's working are usually people that have met their person or their non-related party organically in town, or they have known them for 15 years. So those success stories I can talk to. The ones that are in the Landlink, it is so young still, that Landlink, that there's not a trust process or a trust pillar that has been established yet of the people that we have linked together in our Landlink program. And so the idea that the business has already moved to that non-familial person in our Landlink is not real yet. Just because even when you bring back a young person to your family and they are a part of your family, I tell them, don't go into business with your child that you just brought back. Have a testing period. Make sure that they're committed to this. Make sure that this is the life that they want. If they're bringing a spouse back, make sure it's the spouse's goal to be here too, and that they love it just as much as the working child. So there has to be a testing period. And usually in all paper and all research, it's really like 3 years is a minimum testing period. And since our Landlink started July of 2023 or 2022, we haven't hit that testing period yet for some of the people that we've matched. But I can go into the matching process, but I could also talk about the non-familial or non-traditional succession plans that I've been working on with folks who, again, met organically, have been working together for so long at this point that they're actually doing the transition piece, while, again, our Landlink is the matching piece. So I have both
Yeah.
sides
Let's
of
talk about the second
non-related.
part. Yeah, let's talk
Um,
about the second part and just dive into that.
yeah, so really the non-related party transfers are very interesting. Again, you have to have trust. You have to kind of treat them as if they were your child. And that's how this can work for both parties, is that you have to cut them a break, or you have to be fair. You have to understand what they can afford. You have to be open to a longer process. And so some of the farmers and ranchers that have been successful at transitioning, we're talking about a 10 to 15 year horizon of a buyout, of a selling agreement. And so we're not talking about people making this decision or being able to sell out in 3 years. We're talking about people having to take a little bit of time, in that it is a longer, drawn out process. One, it avoids a huge tax consequence if you're able to spread out that tax over time. So if you sell a piece of machinery or equipment, you can't do installment sales. The IRS says, oh gosh, no installment sales. You have to claim all of that as income, capital gains tax, all in the year that you decide to sell that piece of machinery. And that's very hard for farmers and ranchers to figure out how to not trigger that huge tax event. And so what you can do is kind of take percentages at a time of those pieces. Or you could put it into an LLC, so a limited liability company, and have that younger generation kind of buy out shares of that LLC, and then they own that LLC over time. So there are certain plans that you can do, or that people are doing, and it depends on what your goals are. So some people are like, I don't want to be in business with a person who is not a family member. So the idea of us being both share owners in an LLC doesn't make me feel comfortable. And so then the LLC route is not for them. Then we don't use that tool. And the tools that we use are talking about tax planning of what pieces of machinery or equipment is that younger person interested in? How would you like them to buy it out? What can you take on this year? So say you had a carryover loss and you were able to sell a piece of equipment and it wouldn't trigger a huge tax consequence. Then we have to plan for that, and we can plan for that. And so these are conversations that happen for a long time, of a little piece at a time. I met with a non-related party transfer today. We were working on lease agreements. And so this farmer actually has been working with this young producer for, I think, 10 years. And actually the wife of this farmer, she was his first grade teacher. And so they have known him since he was 7 years old and remembers him from class. And they have been working with him for 10 years. And this is the first year that they feel comfortable actually cash renting to him. And so what we had to talk about is, what is an equitable lease to make sure that he can afford it. He is trying to expand. He was buying out a family member already at this point. And so what is his ability to pay? What are you offering? So a lot of farmers and ranchers have not been able to eloquently say what they're offering in their description of what they want to give to that young person. And so we had to dive into what he's offering. He's offering pasture. He's offering the new fences that he has built. He's offering his equipment use with operating this pasture ground, with the hay bales, moving hay, moving grain for the cows. He's offering the shed space. He's offering a semi. And so all of these things are a part of that lease agreement. and is what he wants that young person to pay for in this lease. And so can the young person afford it? And so we go through, what are the taxes? What are the minimum amount of money that we need to get in this lease agreement to make sure that our bills are paid off of this? But we don't want to break him. And so it's a mutual conversation. It's a negotiation piece. But you have to have goodwill towards that beginning farmer or rancher. You can't just increase the price or hike the price up, because we want them to succeed. And that's the ultimate goal of this farmer and his wife, that he wants this young person that they've worked with for 10 years to succeed. And by giving them more pasture ground, they're able to increase their cows. They're able to be close to home because the pasture is near their home. So maybe they have to let go of rented acres that are further away, whatever it might be. But their ultimate goal is to protect his interest, give him an opportunity, and make sure that it really just covers their cost. And so that is just one this morning that I'm working with. I know another farmer rancher in town that they did a non-related party transfer. It took them 15 years. They entered into a corporation structure where they were buying them out over that 15 years. And it took a full 15 years to have that buyout happen. But now they own all the cows. I think they own majority of the land. They own all the equipment. But it was a 15-year buyout. And they're one of the best success stories, but it took a long time. And so the non-related party transfers probably need more time leading up to the transfer than related parties, because you're talking about people that you don't necessarily want to name in your estate plan. So you have to give them assets or allow them to purchase assets or give them rights to assets while you're alive, so that you don't have to will them something or put them in your trust because they already have those assets. And so it is a different process. It is extremely interesting. The people that are really working towards these non-related party transfers, that I find that they're very successful, is that they have made up their mind long ago that they knew their family wasn't coming back. And so the ones that are calling me at 77 and saying they want to do a non-related party transfer are ones that were kind of holding out hope that they would have a farm or a family member come back. Or I had a man call me at 80 and say that he has a 2-year-old grandson who he knows will take over the farm someday. And so he needs someone in the meantime to run this farm as their own until that 2-year-old is up to speed. And so there's a wide array of people, but again, the ones that I find most successful are the ones that have known from a very early age that their kids weren't interested, that they weren't coming back. And so they had to think at 50 and at 55, what are we going to do? And that allowed them a lot of time to make good decisions, to use a lot of tools, where a 77-year-old might not have a 15-year horizon to be able to do that. So
I think it's one of those things that this is truly an aspect that time is in your favor. Like the more time you give yourself, the better for everyone involved. But that can also lead to a lot of like issues, problems, trials, tribulations, droughts can happen, Mother Nature can happen, like all of the crazy things that life farming and ranching can happen over 15 years. Can you talk a little bit about like just some common struggles that you see or barriers or just things like that that you're kind of seeing with these transition plans that are kind of drawn out?
yeah, so I mean, if you think, I have clients that are in Western Kansas and they had a 3-year drought, where a lot of their feed was taken out. They didn't have good cash crops. And so they have been operating based on no real crops or no real income based on the drought. And so that gets really hard again in transition planning. Where is that money going to come to buy out someone? So if the farm is not making money and the producer is not making money, where do you expect them to get the money to take out a loan to buy you out? And so this is a really hard thing when the commodity markets are down and we're not making money anywhere. But it's really hard to say, should that young person go, or the next generation go out and take a loan to buy out mom and dad, or a non-related party? Interest rates are 9-10%, and take out a loan of a commercial bank to try to buy them out when the farm hasn't made money in the last 3 years. And so it is an extremely hard situation. And it takes, again, that time to say, okay, if you can't make the payment this year, we can add a year here, and be flexible and understand what they're going through. And a lot of the ones that are also successful have sort of gifting with buying together. And so they're discounting what people are buying. So they're gifting you a little bit and you're buying a little bit. And it's going to take it down to an affordable level, or a level that they seem is fair. And again, that requires a lot of conversation, because if you're discounting something and say it's to a non-related party, and your family finds out that you sold your equipment for 75% of what it's worth while you were alive, then it could be a source of conflict of saying, hey, you owe us that money. However, if mom and dad do this while they're alive, the children have no right to say anything. And so, again, trying to plan about transferring the business while alive, transferring those equipment, machinery, those cows, things while you're alive, allows for less conflict after you're gone, because these things are out of the estate. They're out of conversation for the next generation to fight over. And they allow that next generation, whoever is operating or trying to run this as a business to support their family, their livelihood, they have the assets to do so. They have the machinery and equipment. They have the cows. What is someone who lives in Minneapolis going to do with 1/3 of every cow that you own on your farm? What are they going to do with that? What are they going to do with 1/3 of a combine? What are they going to do with 1/3 of a tractor? So these are things that, again, talking to families about planning, what are your goals? Is your goal that this farm can live on to a next generation? Yes. Is this far, or is your goal that you're allowing a young family who's interested in being in agriculture, giving them a leg up or a start? Yes. Then there are some things that you need to consider when talking to these people, and need to understand that they can only afford so much. And there's only so much that FSA can give out. And it doesn't even touch the surface of having any land purchase, when FSA's limit is $600,000. That's not going to get you very many acres. And so what can they afford? What can you afford as a farmer, rancher, retiring? What do you need for retirement? Some of my farmers and ranchers can live off of $20,000 a year. And I don't know how they do it, but some of them somehow do. And some of them have aspirations to be the new cruise folks. Like they want to be a couple that goes on cruises. And so they're actually going to require more out of retirement than they ever did while they were working. And so we have to identify what those next steps are, what those goals are, what those aspirations are, and where's the money going to go, and who's it going to go to, and how's it going to get.
Yeah. Can you, just to put it into perspective for everyone, can you talk a little bit about what why do we need to do this? What is happening if we don't plan this out? If people like know that they don't have kids coming back, they're like, oh, they'll sell it. Like, we'll die. The kids can sell it. Not a big deal, whatever. Just talk a little bit about that. Like, if we're not doing succession plans, what's happening?
Yeah, so right now we're seeing that there are less and less farms. I mean, the amount of operators that are out there, we are shrinking in amount of operators. Our farms are getting larger and larger, which means they're getting more and more expensive for people to buy in, and people that are interested in agriculture being able to start a business in agriculture. So the average farm size in Kansas, according to the 2022 census, is about 850 acres. And so that is a lot to bite off if you're thinking of an average cost being around like 2,000 per acre. So we're talking about massive amount of capital, massive amount of prices that are associated in just having the statistically average farm size in Kansas. Really, we're talking about families, small towns that rely on farm families to shop in that small town, to raise kids in those small towns, to be a part of that small town. So city council, church communities, all these people rely on folks being in that town, spending money on that town, paying taxes to that town. That if we get less and less people in those towns, the less amenities there are going to be there, the less even grocery stores or convenience stores can be in that small town. The schools are not going to get funded. They have to consolidate. And so it is an issue about keeping rural communities alive if we don't plan for succession, if we don't have these farms go to a family. So if it's able to support your family now, then think about it supporting a family in the future. These large corporate farms or very large farms might have their corporation in 2 counties over. That's where they're paying taxes. They're also coming into your town, farming and leaving. They're not even stopping at your convenience stores. They're not paying for the road use. They're not paying for your local schools. These are things that, as a person who loves agriculture, as a person who loves farmers and ranchers, as a person who visits a small town weekly, I don't want to see go away. And I hope that folks in agriculture don't want to see that go away either. One of the best speakers that I've ever seen a keynote is like, encourage your kids to have a mailbox here. And like, that just like touched my heartstrings of like, you want to raise your kids to go off and be successful wherever they are, but you should bring people back to your community and bring mailboxes to your town if you want it to succeed. And so you have to bring more folks in if you want that little city center to come back to life. You have to bring folks back to your town if you want a local grocery store again. And so these are things that farmers, again, have to pay taxes, are supporting these communities by being in that town, by living in that town. And if we let that go away, again, we're going to shrink those small towns even more than they are. And they're not going to exist anymore, which is extremely sad. But this is kind of the overall picture of why I think succession planning is so important, and why talking about bringing someone in or bringing a new beginning farmer rancher in to give them that opportunity to live in the small town, to have that rural life, and also keep your rural city center or your rural community alive. And so, yeah, that's kind of my soapbox on that one.
Yeah, it really is extremely important. And I think it needs to be put into perspective a little bit more often for us of like, hey, this is what happens if we don't make a plan. Like it's sometimes people need that little fear aspect put into them to get their butts in gear and to go have those meetings that are uncomfortable and they're not really fun to have. You don't want to talk about dying. You don't want to talk about not running an operation that you've spent your livelihood and countless hours and countless amounts of money pouring your heart and soul into. You don't it's hard to talk about those things. And they're not fun conversations to have, but they're conversations that need to be had. Can you talk a little bit more? I would love to go into just the future of your like connection program that you guys run at K-State and kind of what that's looking like. Just what that a little bit more about it, and then also just like if there's any young farmers and ranchers listening to this that they're like, hey, that kind of sparked my interest, just what it looks like and things like that.
Yeah, so the Kansas Landlink program again started taking applications in July of 2022. And what it looks like is that there's a 12-page application for a land seeker and there's a 12-page application for a landowner. We filled that out completely online. The only person who has access to those files are myself. What happens on the land seeker side is that they fill out the application online and I go through that application with them in a follow-up phone call. So the expectation is that you fill out the application, you click submit, you'll receive an email from me. You fill out when you can meet, and then we meet and talk on the phone about your application. Really, this phone call is for me to get to know you as best as I can because I'm the one that talks to the landowners. I'm the one who's trying to sell you to a landowner and find out if you would be a good fit for that landowner. And so the landowner usually calls me and they're usually older. And so I offer that I can do it online with them over the phone, or they can meet with me in person and we'll go through that application for the landowner. Once that landowner has filled out that application, I look at what land seekers fit this landowner. So if this land seeker is interested in being in the foothills, or Flint Hills, if this producer is interested in beef cattle, if this producer or this young person has ever worked on double crop beans, if this person has ever worked on irrigation, what is the experience of this land seeker? What are they looking for? If they have a spouse that works in Topeka and they do not want that spouse to lose their job that's in Topeka, then we have like a 50-mile radius around Topeka that they would feel comfortable being matched with someone. And so my job is to kind of match them geographically, match them based on their interest, match them based on what they're willing to do. So some of my seekers or my land seekers that are in this are really just interested in expanding their acreage. They don't want to go into business with a landowner. They're looking for a cash rent if those acres come out through our Landlink program. A lot of the landowners that are in our program, though, are wanting to work with someone for a little while before they go into a lease agreement system. And so they're willing to pay that person for an hourly wage or salary, and that is all negotiable. And they want to make sure that they can trust this person. They also want to, again, instill their legacy, how they've been able to make the farm work. All of our landowners really have no debt associated with their farm at this point. So they're in a great financial position to be able to kind of hand off the farm to the next owner. And so we really talk about what are the two parties willing to do? What are they interested in? And how do we set parameters on how we're going to evaluate it? So after 1 year, we're going to talk about, okay, if they learned the ins and outs of this business, if they were able to get more management training or make more management decisions, then we should probably be increasing their pay. Or we should talk about other ways to compensate them. So should they get a share of the profit? And so we're kind of setting them up to go into the transition conversations, but really how to structure them as a part of the business or as an employee and then set them up to when we have checkpoints and how it's going. And so right now we have 2 people out of our land's owners that have matched with land seekers. And so right now we have 21 landowners and we have 130 land seekers. And so it is a typical Landlink program has about a 20-1 land seekers to landowner ratio. And so we're not far off of typical. So our landowners that have actually matched with people that they didn't know were looking for land. And so they actually knew these folks before. They knew them in their town. They didn't know they would be a part of this Landlink program, and they actually knew them. And so they had conversations with them and were able to match with them. Some of my other landowners have expectations, or they are looking for a specific person that comes in. And so it's very hard to find them a match. Because they have a dream of a person that will come in and take over their farm. And so we have to try to manage those expectations of who they are actually going to find and also what they're willing to pay in salary. And so, the job is not easy when managing this Landlink program. I will say that our land seekers, their information gets passed out to a landowner as soon as they come in if they have minor, even little matches that I think could work. And some actually get contacted by a landowner or are like, this would not work for me. I'm not interested. And so the land seeker does have say, and if they want to continue the process, once that landowner calls them and makes them aware of who they are, what they have, what they're trying to offer. But yeah, if you are interested in trying to be matched with a landowner and trying to expand your operation or get into agriculture, trying to farm or ranch full time, this is an opportunity that is really free for you besides your time to put in the application and submit it, and then the time to meet with me, to just have your name thrown in the ring. And again, I might send your application to someone that you're like, no way would I work for them, or that is not the operation that I'm comfortable with. But your name came across their desk in a way and gave you an opportunity to be in front of these people that you might have not met on the street or at a conference. And so it's just an opportunity for you to get your name out there and to get back into agriculture. And so if you are interested, please go to our website, agtransitions.org, and you can see the Landlink program, and you can really just do the application online. I've had people do it from their phones. So even if you're on your phone, you can do it from there. But yeah, so even if you think, maybe I want to farm in 5 years, or maybe I'm going to go back to my farm, but it's not big enough for me and my siblings, please fill out an application. We keep your application in our Landlink program forever until you tell us you want to take it out. And so it is an opportunity for you to be, again, in front of people that you might have not known were looking.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's just another resource for farmers and ranchers. And you did mention that most other states have something similar to this, correct?
Yeah.
So,
So each state has, well, except for Nebraska, Nebraska and us have a very similar program. Some other states, their Landlink looks a little different, but a lot of states have Landlink programs. If you ever need to say, oh, I'm looking in this state, do they have a Landlink program? Also, feel free to reach out to me. I had folks that were from Iowa that didn't know Iowa had a Landlink program, and they said they would move anywhere, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa. And what we've actually done is Nebraska and Kansas, we can share applications. So if an applicant says, I would be interested in a farm in Nebraska just as much as Kansas, then we actually share applicants as long as they're okay with that. And so it is a program that I am connected to many land links across the US. And so if there are multiple states that you'd be interested in this opportunity, feel free to reach out about those as well.
Yeah. So when you're going through these land links and stuff like that, and people are kind of looking on the horizon, I know you guys haven't had a ton of them happen. Are you seeing more like salaried agreements? Or are you seeing more like lease to own agreements or just different things like that? What's that kind of look like? What, if someone's interested in this, what can they kind of expect that they would be, in a sense, getting themselves into with a program like this?
I would say our current landowners are more interested as you working as an employee for a number of years before you get in the conversation about maybe profit sharing or buying out the business. And so I will say that that's a little bit of the expectation from our landowners now is that you're willing to work for them for a couple of years. However, I am very protective over our beginning farmers and ranchers. And I want to make sure that if you're moving your whole life to go work for a farmer that's in a different part of the state or whatever, I want you to be protected. So my role is to kind of say, do you have an employment contract? Are you interested in kind of setting specific expectations? So after 3 years, we're going to do another negotiation. I'm going to be a part of these conversations. So kind of goal setting for them to make sure that they're not there for 15 years and nothing has changed. Because I personally have had about 3 friends that have gone into an agreement or just a verbal confirmation that they were going to be the next generation on this guy's place. And 5 years has passed, 7 years has passed, and nothing has changed. No ownership has changed. They are just that hired hand. And I want to say, like, my office, the Landlink program's goal is to not just have a hired hand or a farm manager. It is to have that next generation that's able to make operational decisions and take over the business aspect of things. And so I tried to weed out landowners who try to join our Landlink that are truly just looking for a farm manager and never willing to give up ownership of the farm business. And so I do have to explain to some landowners or farmers that this is not a farm manager finder. This is a next generation finder. This is a business owner finder. And so I do want to tell people that I am actively trying to make sure that the people that are in our program are willing to allow the business to move to a new person. I'm not saying the land might move to a new person or a non-related party, but my job is to also help say, should you have a long-term lease in your estate planning documents to help protect the interest of this next generation that you have chosen to be your successor? Should you have a buy-sell agreement for this person that you have chosen to be your successor? And so I talk about protections of that next generation. And I want that next generation to be protected if they're related or they're not related. So I would say related parties, I give the exact same advice to. There are too many family operations out there that you have worked for your family for nothing for 20 years and you still have nothing to show for it after they're gone. And so I try to protect that younger generation as much as I can. As I identify with them, I have biases of saying I want to protect my generation who is interested in farming and ranching. Because there's, as the older folks tell me all the time, there's not a lot of people that want to work anymore. And so that is the sentiment that I get a lot of places is there's not a lot of young people who want to work anymore. And so I'm like, if someone says they want to be a farmer or rancher, which are one of the hardest jobs there ever was, that there is the least flexibility in I have to feed cows every single day, then maybe we should let them take over that business. Maybe we should let them take over that farm. Maybe we should allow them into ownership a little earlier, or have those conversations at least. Because if you have a person that's willing to work, then maybe you should keep them and make them happy and make them feel included. And so I do say that I try to protect that next generation as much as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, Ashlee, we have had such an amazing conversation today, going over all of the things. I'm sure we could probably talk for much longer if we were given the opportunity to. But I would love to start rounding out the podcast and hear your one piece of advice that you have for the next generation of agriculture.
I would say my piece of advice that I see the next generation is have curiosity. Don't be afraid to ask for help. So I think that a lot of older farmers and ranchers didn't know about financial planning, or did not feel comfortable reaching out to an attorney for advice, or using an accountant the ways they should. So I think that the success of having a team around you, or a team approach, and trying to find advisors that work with you and for you is a very important concept that I would encourage you to start early. Um, Again, I don't want to see the issues that I see right now of no retirement accounts, no way of retiring, has to rely on the farm to pay for their retirement, tap into another generation. And so having those advisors, being willing to talk to advisors or ask for help, or ask how you can help the business, will set you up in your older years a lot better. And so if I was a young person, I am a young person, I am turning 32 years old, I want to make sure that I can retire someday. And I am doing what I can do today to make sure that happens. And if that's investing in off farm accounts, but even if you're a young person, investing in land is a great investment, and it is shown to pay off. But make those investments young so you can pay them off young. And so take the risks now, but again, have a team of advisors that can help you identify the risk associated with some of your practices, or be able to help you. Hey, you have 2 kids. They are only 5 and 2 right now. But what happens if you and your wife get into a horrible situation, and now where are your 2 kids going to go? If you've never gone to an attorney's office, you might not have thought about your estate plan at 32 years old, where the 70-year-olds are now understanding, like, oh, I am going to probably die someday. And so just having a team of advisors, being open to advisors, being very curious. And I say that with an advisor hat, but also being curious to other farmers and ranchers. So some of the non-related parties that I have talked to, it's because that younger generation was curious and asking that older generation what they were doing. How did they become successful? How did they, what did they grow this year? How did they do it? Asking them for information. So be curious, be willing to ask questions, be willing to ask for help. So mentors. And then you might be surprised that some of these people that you reach out to as mentors might look at you as their next generation. And that might be the opening to a beautiful relationship that is organic, that is based on a mutual respect, just because you recognize that person and you were curious and you asked for help. And so ask for help. Don't be afraid to get help. And use the people around you. So
Yes, thank you so much, Ashley. And oh my gosh, seriously, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you for your wealth of knowledge today and everything like that. To all the listeners out there, I will have all of the links and everything that Ashley was discussing today linked down in the show notes down below. So make sure you head down there, go reach out to Ashley's office, even if you're not in the state of Kansas, and she can connect you with the right people for your respective states and all the things. And as always, thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Next Generation. We'll see y'all next week.